Let me
All right,
think a
let's
little bit.
back with the chat on Newsday Amarillo and News Channel 10-2. I'm David Lovejoy.
And I'm Chuckalicious, Chuck Williams.
And join us from the Pacific Research Institute, one of our favorites, Dr. Lance Izumi, author of several books, a leading expert in the educational system in the United States of America. A new poll shows dissatisfaction with school boards and surprising agreement on what to do. Dr. Lance and the Pacific Research Institute had just released this new poll asking Americans what they think about school boards. Dr. Lance, what did you find in your survey?
Well, first of all, thanks very much, David. Great to be on the show again with you and Chuck. I think what was really interesting is that oftentimes, yeah, at least in the past, schools and school boards often had the same kind of reaction from people that people have with, let's say, Congress, right?
Right.
People dislike Congress in general, but they like their own congressman or congresswoman, right?
Mhm.
Uh, and that's oftentimes what you would have seen in polling on schools. But what we found in this national survey that was conducted by the Pacific Research Institute, we actually asked people what do they think about their own school board, not about school boards in general, but what do they think about their own local school board? And what we found was that you had more people who had a mediocre to very low opinion of their own local school board versus those who thought that their boards were excellent or good. So you had nearly half, 49% of our respondents in this national poll that said their local school boards were fair, poor, or very poor. And compared that with just 36% who thought their school boards were excellent or good. So, there was a big disparity between, how people viewed their school boards. And, a lot more thought that their school boards were mediocre to actually very low.
One of the things I've heard people say about school boards or have a feeling about is they're kind of disconnected. They don't represent or a cross section of communities. It's almost an elite type thing. Some say they have too much power.
Hmm.
They don't take into consideration what the parents are concerned about, and some say that maybe they bow down to the unions that are involved in education. What are some of the things that people are dissatisfied most with on school boards?
Yeah, no, people are dissatisfied with specific things about the school boards, and we actually asked the people who were dissatisfied, well, what was it about their own school boards that they were dissatisfied about? And it was really interesting what their responses. 59%. So you're talking 6 out of 10 of these dissatisfied people who had a mediocre to lower opinion of the school boards, we asked them, what they thought, and 59% thought that the boards are focusing on the wrong goals,
Mm.
Hmm.
and so 50, and then you had 55 because we gave people a number of choices, and they could choose as many as they wanted, and that they thought applied. So you had 55% who thought that the school boards didn't listen enough to the people who they should listen to, and that 55% thought that the boards were trying to promote their own ideological or
Mm.
personal agenda. And 52% thought that the boards allowed the wrong people or groups to influence their decisions. And so, when you think about who's influencing decisions, who are the wrong people that the boards are listening to, we asked the uh, people in our survey, well, what groups or individuals had too much influence on school board decisions? And turns out that 42% said they thought that actually that the federal government had too much influence on the decisions and impact on school boards. 37% thought that it was state government, and 26%, so more than a quarter, thought that the teachers' unions had too much influence. And only 14% said that the parents had too much influence. So, you had the federal government, the state government, and the teachers union basically being viewed by the people who had a low opinion of the school boards, thinking that these are the entities that had too much influence. And the flip side of that, David, is like who had too little influence,
Right.
right? And we asked people who had too little influence on school boards, and our survey showed that 43%, so more than 4 out of 10 people, said that parents have too little influence on school boards. And just 23% thought that the teachers union had too little influence, and only about 1 out of 10 thought the federal and state governments had too little influence. So, in other words, parents who have the biggest stake in school board decision making were seen as the least influential group when it came to impacting school board decisions.
Well, I guess my deal is how can we flip that script? How is that possible? I mean, you go to a school board meeting, I have something I need to say. In some cases, they might shut the mic off on you, or you'll get booed off the podium, something like that. How do we flip that script?
No, I think that's a really important point, Chuck. Well, first of all, I think parents, if they want to have influence on school boards, they actually have to show up.
Right.
It's because I'll tell you, I served as the president of the board of governors of the California Community College System, and it's basically a super board, really, education board in California, and we had all the various interest groups there showing up to give their opinion about various issues, but we had very little input from parents of students themselves. And so if you really want to have the impact on the decisions of these school boards, you really have to, first of all, go to the board meetings and make your voices heard. And be sure that you understand what are the issues that the board's discussing. And you want to be able to address those issues before they become a problem in your kid's classroom. And so go to the board, be able to talk about those issues, do your own background research and be able to talk about these issues. And so therefore, it doesn't come as a huge surprise when your kid comes home with, some materials and you're upset about it.
Right.
Dr. Lance, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I think what we need to do is define what the role is. What's the role of a school board? What's the role of the ISD? And what's the role of the parents? And what lane they should be in when we talk about this subject. So we're back with Dr. Lance Izumi from the Pacific Research Institute on the chat right here on News Day Amarillo and News Channel 10-2.